Hello and welcome to Econ and Decon, that's short for Economics and Deconstruction, where we're going to be talking about, you guessed it, mostly economics, but also deconstruction of media narratives that we all hear every day and are in many cases lies. So why the channel?
Why?
The short answer is curiosity and propaganda. I'm a very curious person, probably got too much time on my hands. I even spent an entire Saturday on Flat Earth. Okay, spoiler alert, it's not flat. But the point is that not everybody has that time. So I'm here to offer you a shovel, to give you a little bit of a shortcut to some of the things you're being lied to, complete with documentation in the description. So again, as we talked about, it's not just my own curiosity, but just the propaganda that we're surrounded by all day. So for instance, after 9/11, all we heard was that these people, these terrorists, hated us for our freedom. To me, that sounded a little childish and a little cartoonish almost. So you spend 5 minutes digging in and you realize that's not why they say they attacked us. Maybe that's worth looking at. Doesn't mean they have a good reason to attack us, but it does mean that the truth is important. So that's what we're going to be getting into on this channel. I hope you'll join me, but this first episode, we're really just going to be talking about propaganda in general to set the table for the rest of the episodes, because if you can accept some of the things we're talking about today, then you'll realize that you are surrounded by lies. Now, propaganda is not just about people lying to you. That's not exactly how it works. Now, don't get me wrong, Sean Hannity is a real person. But it's not just that you are blatantly lied to all day, every day. It's not that everybody's in on it. Propaganda is often just about what you don't hear, the things that are kept from your television screen. And to do that, you really only need maybe one person at a newspaper or, on a cable news show. I mean, a great example is Brian Stelter. All right, Brian Stelter had a show on CNN for a long time called Reliable Sources, which is incredible. But Brian Stelter might not be in on it. He's probably not. Brian Stelter legitimately might just be an idiot.
You're cracking me up.
But somebody hired that idiot. And whoever did was probably not interested in intelligence or journalistic integrity. So what were they interested in? I would argue that whoever hired Brian Stelter hired him because he already had the right opinions. That's how propaganda works. While most of my videos are going to be deep dives into specific topics, we're going to take more of a shotgun approach today, just to set the table for the rest of the videos, just so we get a sense of who we're talking about and exactly how willing they are and how far they're willing to go to lie to you. So the easiest examples are things that have already been declassified. So we'll start with the Gulf of Tonkin incident. This is what got us into the Vietnam War. There was a story about how Vietnamese torpedo boats had attacked a U.S. naval ship in the Gulf of Tonkin, and that's how we got into the Vietnam War. Long story short, this is now declassified. It's on the U.S. Naval's intelligence website, link in the description, but it was always a lie. There was no attack. The entire thing was made up, and the generals knew it at the time. It was simply used as pretext to go to war with Vietnam. Fully declassified. Now, far more damning than the Gulf of Tonkin incident is Operation Northwoods. Operation Northwoods was a proposal that the Joint Chiefs of Staff made to John F. Kennedy. Now, thank God he had the good sense to reject it. But this proposed that we create your prototypical false flag in order to go to war with Cuba. So we were going to do things like paint an American F-86 in Cuban colors and bomb the Dominican Republic. We were going to stage an attack on our base at Gitmo, Guantanamo Bay in Cuba. We were going to set off bombs in Miami and blame it on a Cuban terrorist cell. We were going to blow up a drone flying over Cuba and then blame it on the Cubans. Actually, in the document, it goes so far as to say that they were going to pretend it was a flight full of, college students. They were going to have fake funerals for fake victims. So these are people very high up in our government that are willing to kill innocent people, lie to you about it, and then use that as an excuse to kill more innocent people. Now, of course, these are the Joint Chiefs of Staff, so making war is, probably good for job security. But once you realize that the government and the media is filled with people who are willing to do things like this and lie to you about things like this in order to kill people, what exactly do you think they're not willing to do? I mean, does anybody believe that they weren't doing worse things 60 years ago that haven't been declassified yet? Or that they're not doing worse things right now that either will never be declassified or at least not for 50 or 60 years? I mean, nobody admits to the worst things they've ever done. Look, O.J. Simpson admitted that he was a bad husband. But he was a way worse ex-husband. In 2017, it was alleged that Bashar al-Assad, the leader of Syria, launched chemical weapons attacks on his own people. Specifically in 2017, there was an attack alleged in Douma, Syria. Now, a lot of people may remember this. There was a Facebook post from the area that showed people like screaming and putting water in their eyes and things like that in a hospital. And based on that evidence, literally a Facebook post, Donald Trump spent $110 million bombing mostly anti-venom factories in a relatively poor country. I mean, a lot of people might remember this. Even people on the left, at that time, everybody was saying the election was stolen. Everybody hated Donald Trump. But even the people on the left, even MSNBC, people were saying things like, Donald Trump really became president today. Today is the day that Donald Trump became president. And yeah, that makes, a certain amount of sense because nothing is more presidential than bombing brown people in poor countries based on flimsy evidence. But everybody got behind him that day. Shortly after all of the bombings, the OPCW, the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, sent a fact-finding mission to Douma, Syria, and where they did readings, where they looked and tried to find out what was the evidence of a chemical attack, what actually happened here. It turns out they brought back a 100-page report full of all their readings that showed actually there wasn't a chemical weapons attack. There's no evidence whatsoever that a chemical weapons attack came out. So while many people remember the day that Donald Trump became president, and while many people remembered today that Assad gassed his own people, none of you know the name Ian Henderson. I bet almost nobody watching this video knows the name Ian Henderson. Ian Henderson was a member of the OPCW. He was on that fact-finding mission. Him and another whistleblower immediately came out when all this was reported because they had turned in a 100-page report with all the science and all the readings included. But the OPCW, when they got that report, contracted it down to about 5 pages, took out all of the science, and they just said, yep, chemical attack. Immediately, Ian Henderson and another whistleblower who is chosen to remain anonymous came out and said, absolutely not. This is not our report. Nair Mate has done a lot of good reporting on this, if anybody's interested in finding out more, but he did a testimony in front of the UN based around Ian Henderson's story and on this other anonymous whistleblower.
Leaks from inside strongly suggest that the OPCW has been severely compromised, and the implications of this are grave.
All the links for that are in the description, but the smoking gun here is not that they're right. You can decide for yourself, you can dig as far into this as you want. The smoking gun is that you've never heard Ian Henderson's name. I bet almost nobody watching this video, I bet none of the 12 of you have heard Ian Henderson's name. Everybody knew about this story. Everybody still remembers that Assad gassed his own people. But nobody's heard Ian Henderson's name because the moment he came out and blew the whistle, the story was completely dropped. Even on the left, for as anti-war as they pretend to be, Rachel Maddow never told you Ian Henderson's name. They just dropped the story. And that's how propaganda works. You scream from the rooftops about how bad this thing is, and the moment this thing turns out to be a load of crap, you move on to the next thing. You just don't even address it. No redaction, no, hey, we're sorry, no, it turned out to be wrong. You just drop it. And by the way, of course Assad did not gas his own people. Look at the circumstances. At the time that this allegedly happened, Assad was winning the civil war. He had 98% control of the country. There were only 2 cities that were still strongholds for ISIS. One of them was Douma. By the way, the al-Nusra Front was in control of Douma. That's basically ISIS. Who do you think filmed the Facebook video that was the evidence of a chemical attack? Most analysts were saying he was weeks away from winning the civil war. And you're telling me that at that moment, he chooses to do the one thing that will get the most powerful military in history involved against him? Forget about being evil or a madman. The guy's not stupid. I mean, you got to have a death wish to do this. This story just never made any sense. But you know, when the military-industrial complex wants to bomb brown people and it can make money doing it, it's going to do it. And when it turns out that it shouldn't have, they're going to cover it up.
Well, when's the last white people you can remember that we bombed? Any white people. The Germans, those are the only ones. And that's only because they were trying to cut in on our action. They wanted to dominate the world. Bullshit, that's our fucking job. That's our fucking job.
Many people might remember a few years ago a man named Jamal Khashoggi, who was a Washington Post reporter. He was actually a Saudi Arabian citizen who had been very critical of Saudi Arabia, which is kind of a big no-no over there. Well, he was murdered at the order of the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. He was chopped up into little pieces at an embassy. My problem here is the way that this was reported in American media. Almost like they were given a script. You kept hearing exactly the same line, that this puts Joe Biden in a very difficult position because even though Saudi Arabia has some human rights problems, they've been a great ally of the U.S. and they are a bulwark against Middle Eastern extremism. That line, that they are a bulwark against Middle Eastern extremism, was everywhere. And it is the most absurd thing I have ever heard in my life. Everybody can agree that ISIS and Al-Qaeda and Al-Nusra Front in Syria are about the worst people ever. This is who we fought the war on terror against. They subscribe to a sect of Sunni Islam called Wahhabism. What they teach is an apocalyptic sect of Sunni Islam. They are gearing up for a worldwide caliphate. That is their goal. This is the most evil, extreme version of Islam that I'm aware of. It is the ideological underpinnings of ISIS and Al-Qaeda, and it is the state religion of Saudi Arabia. They have been putting state money into building these mosques all over the world. They are probably the biggest state sponsor of terrorism in the Middle East. 16 of the 19 hijackers on 9/11 were Saudi Arabians. The only parts of the investigation into 9/11 that haven't been declassified, some of them have been now, but they're the parts that show that Saudi Arabia was involved in 9/11. Osama bin Laden was Saudi. This is one of the most evil regimes on the planet. So why is this everywhere that they're bulwark against extremism? Because they got us by the short hairs. All right, this is a country that through the petrodollar and their influence on OPEC, which is a subject for another video, this is a country that could crash the American economy by 25% nearly overnight if they wanted to.
I don't want to play with you anymore.
That is the only reason why we pretend that they are good guys at all. Meanwhile, we're all taught that we've got to be afraid of Iran. Are you kidding me? Iran? This is one of the most incompetent countries on the planet. This is the reason for my shirt. Weeks away from a nuke since 1992. We've been hearing this war propaganda about Iran and them getting nuclear weapons since at least 1992, and it is ridiculous. You're talking about an oil-rich country that cannot even pump enough oil from under their own feet to feed their power needs. They have rolling blackouts all the time. They can't feed their own population. This is a country that is so incompetent that a few years ago, look this up, they blew down their own commercial airliner flying out of their capital because they were so afraid it might be an American bomber coming to bomb them. They killed hundreds of people and had to apologize for it. That's how incompetent they are. But I'm supposed to be afraid of Iran because they're going to wipe Israel off the map? That war would last 10 minutes and Iran would be a crater. This is one of them. I don't even think they have maps in Iran, but this is what I'm supposed to give up more of my tax dollars to be afraid of? Are you kidding? Look at this map right here. This is a map of U.S. military bases around Iran. These are the guys that we're scared of. These are the guys we got to be worried about. Are you kidding me? They can't throw a rock from their own border without hitting one of our soldiers, and you need more of my tax dollars? You got to spend an hour on television telling me how scared I'm supposed to be of these people? Are you kidding? Who is Amber Lyon? Exactly. Amber Lyon is a name a lot of people should have heard of. She was a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist who worked for CNN for quite a long time. In 2011, she was sent to Bahrain. Where's Bahrain? There it is. So in 2011, Amber and her team went to Bahrain to do a documentary essentially on the Arab Spring, but also on the Bahraini government. When she got there, what she found was shocking. They weren't great on homosexual or women's rights. Who saw that coming?
A man's anus is licked like this, like ice cream. Poo-poo comes out. The other poo-poo's out, and then they eat the poo-poo.
Also turns out that they were violently repressing any sort of Arab Spring or any sort of uprising in their own country from people who wanted to do something about their government. So her and her team were actually detained while they were there, while they were trying to interview certain witnesses. So she came back and made a pretty scathing documentary about the Bahrain government and about the repression that existed in that country. The documentary and her trip in general was paid for by CNN International, and that's where it was always supposed to air, but it never aired on CNN International, which ensured that people in the Middle East never got to see that documentary. In fact, most of the world never got to see that documentary, though it is on YouTube now. I've linked it in the description. But she had a meeting with her boss twice to ask, why is this not being aired? Why are we not airing this documentary on CNN International? And her boss basically told her the second time to stop talking about it, to just keep her mouth shut about it. Well, she didn't. So she got fired. So Amber started doing a little bit more investigation. She did a lot of radio and TV interviews, but essentially what she found was that the Bahrain government was paying CNN for positive PR. The craziest part of this story is that you never heard about it. Like I said, she did some radio interviews, but even Fox News didn't pick up the story, which is wild because their biggest rival just got caught taking payments from a foreign government for positive press. And even Fox News didn't pick up the story. Why on earth would Fox News not pick up that damning story about their rival? Because they're all doing it. There is no way CNN is the only one getting paid by foreign governments for propaganda, and there's no way the Bahrain government is the only one doing it. Does anybody think that the American government doesn't have people on the inside that are getting paid to make sure that there's positive spin? Of course. Why else would CNN's biggest rival not even, nobody at Fox News would even touch Amber Lyon. Bill O'Reilly probably would have touched her. You live in a world where even Fox News won't point out CNN's biggest government-tied corruption. Why do you think that is? Now, the thing I love about old school America is that people were always on the lookout for tyranny. You know, Americans are very distrustful of their government. So the government kind of had to slide the Gulf of Tonkin incident under the radar, no pun intended. They had to wait a few decades before declassifying Operation Northwoods. But, they weren't just going to, they had a little respect for us. They weren't just going to come out and tell us they were propagandizing us. That'd be stupid, right? Right? Jen?
Well, first, we are in regular touch with these social media platforms, and those engagements typically happen through members of our senior staff, but also members of our COVID-19 team. In terms of actions, Alex, that we have taken, or we're working to take, I should say, from the federal government, we've increased disinformation research and tracking within the Surgeon General's office. We're flagging problematic posts for Facebook that spread disinformation.
We're flagging problematic posts for Facebook that spread disinformation.
We're working with doctors and medical professionals to connect to connected medical experts who are popular with their audiences with accurate information and boost trusted content. So we're helping get trusted content out there.
Okay, let me get this straight. Joe Biden, who had to drop out of 3 presidential elections before this one, because he got caught blatantly lying to the American people. Joe Biden, who has never been the smartest person in any room he walked into. Now that guy's got dementia. And he wins a popularity contest based on clearing that high bar of not being Donald Trump. And by promising enough of our shit away. But now that guy gets to be the ultimate arbiter of truth for 330 million people? Are you kidding me? Joe Biden doesn't know what state he's in right now. He's been locked in his basement for 4 years, calling his wife Betty. The guy, he sleeps 18 hours a day and wakes up thinking he's a senator, but that guy gets to tell me whether or not the vaccine works and gets to mandate it for 100 million people? Does anybody think Joey B is in a fucking lab coat somewhere doing cell cultures? Joe Biden can't spell ivermectin, but he gets to tell me that it's horse paste? Come on, man.
Come on, man.
We're going to let the organization responsible for the Tuskegee experiments filter our truth? Oh, yeah. Great idea. Great idea. You know, it's working out well for China. This is an organization that just spent $200 million a day of your money for 18 years trying to build a government in a country where the people living there don't even believe they're a country. And after all that government collapsed within 48 hours of us leaving. All that blood, all that money, all that time bought us 48 hours. And these are your heroes? I'm out. I am all the way. Yeah, sure, great idea. What's the worst that can happen? No way that can go wrong. There's a few ways that can go wrong. In the 21st century, information is the most powerful tool on the planet. And most of our information is filtered by a relatively small group of people who benefit from making you believe that the enemy is the guy down the street who votes differently than you do. Red team versus blue team is a trap. Everybody loses. The truth is that Democrats and Republicans in Washington and in the media generally agree on 85 to 90% of issues, and those are the most wealth-destroying, poverty-creating, life-ending issues that there are. But somebody's benefiting. Your enemy is not in Russia. Your enemy is not even in China. And your enemy is definitely not your neighbor. He might be a dick. I don't know the guy. But the point is that your enemy is in Washington. The people that are affecting your life the most negatively are the people who are inflating away the value of your paycheck and sending your children off to die in foreign wars that have nothing to do with defense. Those are the issues and those are the people that we're going to talk about on this channel. So I hope you'll join me. If you've enjoyed this video, if you feel like you've gotten something out of it, or if I've piqued your interest, then please like and subscribe. Most importantly, share this video with your friends. These conversations will not be had on television. It's up to us to have them. It's up to us to share the information. It's up to us to start the conversation. To start a conversation. Until next time, this is Econ and Decon signing out. Peace.